Welcome to TM Radio Broadcasting. My name is Frank Allen. We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date, Wednesday, December the 18th, 2024. To listen to the broadcast, dial 518-801-1318. When we are off air, you can listen on this line to past episodes 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call into the studio to ask my guest speaker or myself a question at 617-987-8603. Once again, 617-987-8603. Tonight, we have the great pleasure of spending an evening with Jesse Beltran.
Welcome to Mind Nexus, where the boundaries between science, spirituality converge to create transformative experiences. At Mind Nexus, our mission is to merge the realms of space, science, and spirituality, creating a platform for exploration, discovery, and connection. We are deeply committed to shedding light on hidden technologies that impact human rights and expanding our understanding of the universe and ourselves. Our seminars are designed to ignite curiosity, nurture personal growth, and catalyze profound insights. Each event features a diverse lineup of experts who bring together cutting-edge scientific knowledge and the ancient spiritual wisdom. These seminars are not just about learning new information, they are about experiencing a shift in consciousness and discovering new ways to live with purpose and fulfillment. At Mind Nexus, you will explore the science of consciousness, dive deep into the latest research on how our minds work, the nature of consciousness, and the profound connections between our thoughts, emotions, and physical realities. Discover hidden technologies, learn about emerging technology that has significant implications for human rights and personal freedom. Understand how these advancements can both benefit and challenge us in a rapidly evolving world. Integrate ancient wisdom. Experience teachings from various spiritual traditions that have stood the test of time. See how these ancient insights can be harmoniously integrated with modern scientific understanding to enhance your life. Gain practical tools, acquire actionable strategies and techniques for personal and professional growth. From mindfulness practices to innovative problem-solving approaches, you'll leave with tools that you can apply immediately to improve your well-being and effectiveness. One of the greatest benefits of attending Mind Nexus events is the opportunity to connect with a vibrant community of like-minded individuals. Whether you're a seasoned researcher, a spiritual seeker, or simply curious about the mysteries of the mind, you'll find a welcoming space to exchange ideas and form meaningful connections. Our events cover a wide range of topics, including the science of consciousness and human potential, the impact of hidden technologies on human rights, the integration of ancient wisdom and modern science, practical tools for personal and professional growth. We understand that not everyone can attend in person, which is why we offer high-quality live streams of our seminars. Whether you join us on site or from the comfort of your home, you'll have access to the same transformative content and community engagement. But why should you attend my Nexus event? Because you'll gain invaluable insights into your mind's capabilities, explore the frontiers of scientific understanding, and delve into the sacred dimensions of spirituality. You'll leave empowered with knowledge and tools to make positive changes in your life and community. Don't miss out on the extraordinary opportunity to expand your mind and transform your life. Enter your email address below to stay connected and receive updates on upcoming events, special offers, and exclusive content. Join us at Mind Nexus and embark on a journey of discovery and transformation at the intersection of science and spirituality. Enter your email below and stay connected with the Mind Nexus community.
Okay, that was Jesse's presentation. If anybody would like to see it, all you have to do is go to Mind Nexus. Is that .org, Jesse, or .com?
It's actually mindnexuslive.com.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my guest, Jesse Beltran. He is a certified master hypnotist and a leading expert in the fields of frequency, implant technology, and Havana syndrome. He currently serves as the president of Mind Nexus, where he spearheads transformative seminars that bridge the gap between science, space, and spirituality. With a diploma from the nationally accredited Hypnosis Motivational Institute in Tarzana, California, Jesse combines advanced training with over a decade of real-world experience to offer unique approaches to stress reduction, phobia management, PTSD treatment, and performance enhancement. Before his work in hypnotherapy, Jesse was a dedicated firefighter paramedic, where he played a crucial role in establishing the Paramedic Emergency Transportation Program for the Sacramento Fire Department. His passion for public service extended into his tenure as president of the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies, or the acronym ICAACT, where we've seen many times. He works tirelessly, advocated for the safety and welfare of the community. Jesse's academic achievements are equally impressive. He was a member of the Mathematics, Engineering, and Science Association at UC Davis and holds certifications in blood and airborne pathogens from Sacramento State University. Additionally, he co-founded California's third largest internet service provider, focusing on innovative programming and pioneering high-speed data transmission via microwave technology. Today, Jesse is recognized as a visionary, frequently speaking at events, seminars, and retreats on topics such as the impact of frequencies on human health, the dangers of implant technology, and the realities of Havana syndrome. His career is a testament to his unwavering dedication to public service, innovation, and the power of the mind. Okay, I would like to introduce Mr. Jesse Beltran.
Hi, Frank. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for this platform to engage in some real serious topics and disseminate information to educate the general population as well as those who are suffering from a phenomenon. As we know, as anomalous health incidences, it has several crossovers into other categories, but this is an important topic, and I thank you.
Certainly. People ask, what is Havana syndrome? Symptoms.
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Symptoms and causes. Would you like to elaborate?
Sure. So Havana syndrome is a phenomenon that, according to the Department of Homeland Security and our government agencies, that began in 2016 in Havana, Cuba, that it started affecting our U.S. diplomats. And what they were complaining about is an acute onset of some strange sound in in their head, followed by short-term, long-term memory loss, vertigo, pain to their head, a reverberation through the body, which some would describe as electrical shock syndromes. And the United States government didn't give it much credence until the Canadian diplomats started expressing complaints that were exactly the same type of symptomology. Now, we, through the International Center of the Abuse of Covert Technologies, have been covering civilians who have these exact same symptoms, and there's overlap. And we have been conducting data gathering on American citizens who were expressing this through the advent and help of Dr. John Hall, who is the author of 2 books. The first book was A New Breed Satellite Terrorism in America. And the second one is Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control. And in there, he writes a chapter of some of the work that I have been able to accomplish and have been and continue to work on here in the United States and abroad. Basically, what that encompasses is that when I met Dr. Hall in Austin, Texas, we came on the topic about this phenomenon, and I asked, well, why isn't anything being done? And he said, because when people are conditioned to go to their general practitioners and they express these symptoms, doctors today and over the decades just check boxes, and depending on what boxes are checked, they come up with a diagnosis. And then back then, if you complained about these symptoms, just because the advent of the auditory symptom in itself, it automatically railroaded you, health industry, and people were being re-victimized.
I noticed that they have come up with many, many different factors on this, and one of them was directed energy. Some experts definitely believe that it is a directed energy weapon, such as microwave ultrasound devices and whatnot. And they have also come up with environmental factors, which I really don't agree with, certain chemicals and whatnot, They have considered these things, but they cannot find any linkage actually to it.
So that's interesting. You are correct. They were claiming that this was a directed energy weapon. In essence, in layman's terms, this device that they could aim at an individual and send certain frequency spectrums that would affect them in the way that they were claiming. There was a case in Florida that this is exactly what was happening to an agent, and they ended up catching a group of Russians, or one specific Russian who was a high-end chef, but later found to formerly work for the KGB. And in that case, there was a directed energy weapon being utilized. Now, but in most of the cases, this is not what is happening. What we have found through our work throughout the United States in doing preliminary RF scanning of individuals, and basically what that involves is utilizing a piece of equipment that can detect for frequency emissions in the environment or around a person. You can attenuate it to where you have to be really, really close to the emission. And we were finding this consistent with those coming to us with these complaints. And there were patterns that were developing. They were coming up positive in very specific focal motor areas around the human body. And that took me to Europe at one point. We were invited over there by a local government agency to test not only diplomats at the embassy and family members, but also to bring over individuals who I felt were experiencing this phenomenon, who had tested positive in the preliminary scan. The reason this was important to do was because they allowed us, we had to sign an NDA, to use a research university's facility, which was an anechoic chamber. And this anechoic chamber was designed to block out frequency spectrums between 8 kilohertz and 19 gigahertz. We knew that this spectrum was well above and below the frequencies that we were detecting out in the field. But we felt if indeed our equipment could read 0 in this environment, then that would be the perfect testing environment. So we tested control groups, people who were not symptomatic, and tested them within the environment. And our equipment did not detect any frequencies, but was more spectacular is our frequency counters would only read 0 while it was scanning.
Wow.
And we knew then that this was the perfect environment to bring these individuals who were testing positive in the field, because if we were going to prove that these frequency emissions were coming from their person, this environment would be ideal. And that's exactly what happened. We tested the controls, they tested 0, but when we brought in those who were symptomatic, our equipment did detect frequency emissions. So it was at that point that we can conclude that for whatever reason, without drawing any conclusions, that these emissions were emitting from the human body for some reason. Ultimately, what that led to is the surgeries. And we have cases now in individuals who are suffering from AHIs, symptoms that overlap with Havana syndrome, and pulling out biosensors and implants. And that's where we are today. We feel, and we've always felt that these individuals who were hearing this frequency or having these auditory symptoms and this plethora of other associated symptoms, that there must be something unique about the individual that allows them to receive the signal. And we now believe strongly, because we're surgically removing implants out of these individuals, that these implants are the reason they are having these auditory symptoms, as well as the other symptoms that go along with AHIs, Havana syndrome, and so forth. Now, why do I talk about Havana syndrome, AHIs, or this phenomenon? My work has raised eyebrows in the federal government, so much so that I had the top doctor of a 3-letter agency contact me recently, about a couple of months ago. And he said, Mr. Beltran, you and Dr. Hall are kind of a renaissance men. And we kind of chuckled, and he goes, the only reason I'm reaching out to you is because I'm intrigued by your work. He says, you are correct. There is overlap between the Havana syndrome victims and the individuals that you have been seeing. He says, I'm intrigued by the fact that you guys are pulling out implants. Tell me more. So I'm just a retired firefighter paramedic, and, my career path now is, I'm a master hypnotist with a diploma in hypnotherapy. And so I posed the question, why would someone of this caliber be contacting me, particularly about our work? And the reason being is, I was told that our federal government really doesn't know what to do for these federal employees, because they're only acknowledging that this is only happening to federal employees. But they neglect to acknowledge that they said it is also happening to family members. And these family members are not federal employees, they're civilians. So although I'm happy that they're now moving on a path to help federal employees get medical attention and bringing resources for them, we still have a long ways to go in order to bring resources and help for the civilian population who is suffering. This year, on March 8th, the Department of Homeland Security held a hearing about the Havana syndrome, or the acronym or the new term that they like to use, as anomalous health incidences, is that Colonel Greg Egren, retired Colonel Greg Egren, testified before Congress, the Department of Homeland Security, and acknowledged that this phenomenon is real. It is happening on our homeland. It is happening to the best of our best. not only in the U.S. Embassy, but our CIA members, our FBI members, and it is now happening to congressional members. And he acknowledges that this phenomenon is happening on every continent with the exception of Antarctica.
Yes, and I would like to add that what I'm seeing and what I've researched tells me that it's in China, Vietnam, Germany, Austria, Serbia, Australia, Taiwan, Colombia, Canada, the United States. I don't believe that you can find actually one country in which it does not exist. They just have it reported. And I think that's the way it is. How do you feel?
Yeah. And we get calls from all over the globe about this phenomenon. I want you to think about this. If this was truly a directed energy weapon that someone needed to point at you, what is the logistics? What are the financial overhead that one would need in order to aim these weapons at so many individuals concurrently at one time? This is why we say there has to be something unique internally to that human person that allows them to receive the signal so they experience this horrific torture, this horrific phenomenon that is now globally happening.
Do you feel in any way that that is DNA or scent? That's been brought up. DARPA did come up with a special sensory device. They called it the dog nose, I believe.
So if I'm understanding your question, I think I heard you say, is this something that is attacking the DNA? Is that what I heard?
No, in other words, how are they, you mentioned that they were targeting many, and they can target few. How do they target the one? In other words, are they using the person's DNA sequence to target this person?
No, because we're pulling out implants, we believe that there has to be something internally that has been put in you in order to receive this signal. And that is the phenomenon that is happening today. Now, the challenge that we face today that we didn't challenge decades ago is that the technology is getting smaller and smaller in size. In the 40s, through FOIA releases, we know that they were implanting soldiers with a large size grain of rice type RFID chip. As you got into the 80s and early 90s, it became down to the size of a small grain of rice. In the late 90s, they were able to bring these devices down to the size of 2 letters on a penny. And now where we're at today, and I only know this because I was invited over to scan a group of military subcontractors in Virginia. And while I was there, I met with a couple of individuals who had worked in the Pentagon, wanted to know why I was there. I already knew they knew why I was there. I briefly said, well, we have these military subcontractors who believe they're implanted and wanted me to come and do RF scans. And he goes, oh, well, what do they look like? We can tell you exactly when they were what year they were made and when they were being put in people. He goes, but today, if it happens to you, you're SOL. He said, they are so small, there's no radiographic image or testing that will be able to detect these. This is why we are utilizing techniques outside of the scope of medicine that allow us to test for RF emissions around a person.
Very good. I know that Kathleen Werner has been mentioned many times because not only was she attacked, her mother was attacked, her pets were attacked, I believe it was another relative that was attacked. The point being is the Chinese singled her out. They didn't seem to go after anyone else from the embassy there. Am I correct?
That is what's being conveyed. Now I have to be careful here because I made some promises to people in government who
say they know exactly how this is being done. I am curious as to why they're not releasing the information, since there's so many victims out there. The individual that I've spoke to is currently treating 338 federal employees for Havana syndrome or AHI diagnoses. And that's probably all that I can speak on that topic at this point.
Yes, I did notice that you had been in touch with a few of the ABC organizations under the government DNI organization. But we've had foreign adversary involvement. And this is coming from Homeland Security. Intelligence community criticism. This report criticized the intelligence community for interfering with the investigation, accusing them of stonewalling, slow-walking, and cherry-picking information. The committee conducted 48 interviews and reviewed thousands of pages of records to gather evidence. In the end, they did call for an action. They told the committee emphasized the need for President Biden and his administration to take decisive action to investigate the causation and attribution of AHIs, or anomalous health incidents. I don't like the terminology either.
Yeah, it's not. This is a weapon. This is a weapon that has many uses. This is a weapon that not only can manipulate an individual's thought patterns. Colonel Egren testified at that hearing that this is a slow kill, long duration hit that is meant to make a person think that they're crazy. Ultimately, we, over the decades, Frank, you can probably attest to this, I know I can, that we've lost some very wonderful people from this who could not have the resilience to work through this, and they committed suicide. And that's ultimately what Colonel Egren was getting at.
Throughout the community, we have had many TIs commit suicide. We had a gentleman in South Carolina. I'm not able to give his name at this time, but he was chased by the police. Excuse me, that was Tennessee. He was chased by the police, and when the police found him, they say, taking a gun to himself. But there's a lot, including his wife, which I had on for a guest, that do not believe that. But
we have many cases that, unfortunately, law enforcement is the primary suspect in doing this to people. We have the Dawn DeVore case where she was a nurse, medical provider who worked for the Department of Corrections, became a whistleblower, and she sued. And in her submission and court papers as evidence, under discovery, there was a document that was intercepted, and it was a document put out by IBM, but a subsidiary corporation called the IntelliSys. And in that document, it describes exactly what they were doing to prisoners, using advanced sedatives to knock them out and non-consensually implant them with these neurochips. And once they implanted these prisoners, and they called it a success, they were able to manipulate them, and they talk about specific frequencies that they transmit to these devices that caused them to be lethargic. If they were aggressive, they would send another frequency that would cause them to be incapacitated. There is a number of things that can be done with this system that the general population would have a hard time believing. But if it wasn't for these smoking gun type evidences, in addition to pulling out implants, the general population would still continue to ostracize and distance themselves from those suffering from this and label them as tinfoil hat crazy conspiracy theorists. But now that with the advent of this evidence being brought forward, in addition to these surgical procedures that are being done, it's very difficult for society to say this is a conspiracy. Now they know it's fact. They now know it's happening. And with through the Freedom of Information Act, we've been able to obtain documents that specifically talk about their plans that they had to do this to people, to the populations. Now, why? Think about this. If you had a silent weapon, an invisible weapon that gave the ability to imprint memory sets into an individual or another individual, what could you do with that technology? If you had a technology that can influence a whole demographic and you wanted to gain political support and control, what a great weapon to have. President Putin gave an interview to the Political that he stated point blank, is the first superpower to master psychotronic weapons will be the superpower to control the world. Now, I strongly believe that back in 2009 to about 2014-15, what we were gathering as data, or those victims that were suffering from this, we believe that there was the mainstream of the experimentation phase. I think now we are in an arms race. We're in a new type of war. And this is why you see the best of our best being affected. I really doubt that our own government would be going after our top CIA agents, our top FBI agents, our top diplomats. In those cases, I strongly suspect that that's probably, in my opinion, going to be a foreign adversary. But nonetheless, the United States is known for experimenting on its own. We have a terrible history of doing it. Who has this technology? We do. Russia does. China does. The UK and India.
Very good. You've had implants. You've removed implants. What have you done with them? Are they something that you've saved? Have the doctors kept them? Or what's the story?
Yes. The cases that are working their way through right now, there was a chain of custody, and so those implants are there as evidence.
Very good.
And so we've taken a different approach. Most people try to attack this as a human rights issue or a violation of the Constitution. Those haven't been very successful. In the cases that are moving forward, because we have the implants, we've been able to take a position that this is a personal injury case. And the judges have accepted our reports as evidence, as well as other professionals who are following this phenomenon as their reports also, and as expert witnesses. So we are hopeful in these next coming years that we're going to prevail. I suspect that we have a very, very, very high percentage prevailing. Once that happens, we will be able to help everyone. Because of the technology getting smaller and smaller in size, it's those who have been victims the longest are going to be the ones that help the entire community.
That's a very, very interesting outlook. Now, we've had scientific studies prior to this, like JAMA. They examined the brain scans of affected individuals and found evidence of brain injuries consistent with exposure to directed energy. So there are a number of scientific factions that are coming forward with the same story. The story's not changing anymore. It's the same story. It's something that's repeated. It's something that's passed around. And we have people like yourself that are willing to lend your time to a cause, to stop it in its tracks before it pollutes humanity. And it's already done too much. We can't let it get any stronger.
No. And right now is the time that everyone needs to wake up. I don't care who you are. And I'm of the opinion, it would be nice to get closure for everyone. But right now, this is really about your genealogy. This is about your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. What is their future going to be like if they are tied to a system that can manipulate you this way, can manipulate your thoughts, can manipulate your behavior, particularly if you have a suggestibility pattern that puts you in the classification of having a high suggestibility or what's called somnambulism, which is 100% suggestible. If someone has a technology where they can put subliminal thoughts in you, in someone like this, you can get them to do almost anything. They won't remember it. That is what we're facing. Now, if free will, or the term free will, really exists, then if you want that to happen for your children and have them to at least experience what pseudo free will feels like, then you need to speak up. We need to start talking about neuro-rights. Technology has way outpaced our laws. Although there are over 22 states currently who have laws in the books of non-consensual implantation, it is still happening, and no one's utilizing these laws to prosecute or to hold those who should be prosecuted, held accountable. That is not happening. So we need to awaken the general population. And I think that's been our movement. And this is where we have been successful in gathering and waking up the masses to the fact that this is happening. The TI community has been under one umbrella for so long. It's been very difficult to break out of that. Through experience and having some talented individuals, we've developed ways on how you speak to the general population, how you spoon feed this information. And with the advent of the evidence, we are becoming more successful in proliferating the message and getting the masses to wake up. We do these seminars now where we talk about these topics. And the nice thing about these seminars, we're getting psychologists attending, we're getting people from NASA attending, engineers, the type of individuals that you typically would not see in a typical TI community meeting. That's important.
Sure is. I sent you an informed consent human subjects research booklet.
Correct. That was very well done.
Yeah, they did a good job there. I was curious. One of the laws that is broken right away is informed consent, the right to get out of the study. I mean, it's definitely not a study, but there are so many things that they have violated. They have broken every law that I think that we have made, and they have broken laws yet to be made. They are certainly unreal.
Well, there's no doubt. The Nuremberg Code, mandates that you have to give an individual full informed consent when they participate in an experiment, including the dangers of participating. But the fact is that you have to give them the choice. And what's happening today is no one's being given a choice. This is just being imposed on you. And just to let you know, at least what the history of this administration and previous administrations believe, the Presidential Bioethics Commission, in 2011, there was 300 TIs that attended that meeting to complain about what was happening. And you know what they were told? They were told, this is hysteria. Some individuals were just told, you just have to live with it. Now, the mentality and the elitism that is being created that environment among this committee is just disgusting. I was invited to a second bioethics commission with regarding this topic in San Francisco, and I was allowed to ask a question. I don't think they fully understood who I was. My assistant wrote the question for me, and it was being televised worldwide. They said my question was next. And when they read my question, they ripped it and read another one. So it was completely censored. And the question was, we understand the importance of your experimentation, but what safeguards are you putting aside for those individuals who are harmed when your experimentation goes wrong? At that meeting, Amy Gutman, who is now the ambassador, I believe, in Belgium, at the UN for us, point blank said this, that they are the elite 1% of the top 1% that should be making all health decisions on humans. They said we are too dumb, inferred we are too dumb to make our own autonomous decisions on what's best for us. And that's the mentality that we're dealing with, and that is unfortunate, and that is why we are here where we are today.
I agree. This came up. Epistemic injustice. Covert research can perpetuate epistemic injustice where the knowledge and experiences of marginalized communities are undervalued or ignored. This is going along with what you were speaking of. This can exacerbate existing power imbalances and reinforce structural inequalities. And historical examples. The history of human experimentation is fraught with examples of unethical practices, such as the Tuskegee syphilis study and Nazi medical experiments. These cases highlight the severe consequences of violating ethical standards and the importance of protecting human rights in research. Accountability and integrity. Ensuring accountability and integrity in research practices is crucial, but it's not being done. I have a...
No, they're skirting it.
They are.
Even let's look at an older case, which is the Dave Larson case, who was a politician out of Southern California, where they pulled out over 10 implants, biosensors out of him. And he sued and he lost, and it was thrown out because he inadvertently signed up to be part of an experiment. Now, had they given him full disclosure, I guarantee you he would never, ever have allowed them to do what they did to him. But the fact is, this is what research organizations are doing. They're not giving you full disclosure. That is very well outlined in that document you sent to me, Frank. But you're correct. They continue to violate this. And I have been forwarded through a FOIA release another document that was titled Individual Rights and the Federal Role in Behavior Modification. Believe it or not, that's what the title is. This is a study prepared by the staff of the Subcommittee of Constitutional Rights on the Committee on the Judiciary, United States Senate, 93rd Congress, second session. This was released in November of 1974. And in it, it already refers, and I'm going to read this real quick. It's a short paragraph, and it's important.
Okay.
It says, within our electrophysiological laboratory, we presently have the capability of programming a wide variety of audiovisual stimuli with current recordings of heart rate, both directly and in beats per minute, galvanic skin responses, changes in, they talk about penis volume. I guess I know why they're doing this, because they're talking about prisoners. Electromyographic responses and alpha and beta brainwaves. We presently are in the process of developing portable biofeedback devices which can be used for self-monitoring. The planned use of the number of satellite facilities outside of UCLA, notably Atascadero Camillo and Vacaville state hospitals raised additional questions of control and made it more difficult to monitor carefully the activities of the CSRV. Moreover, Vacaville and Atascadero were state facilities that had attracted substantial notoriety for allegedly unethical procedures over the past several years. Moreover, among the principal figures involved in the formulation of plans for the center were a number of controversial researchers in the field of behavior control technology, notably several psychosurgeons and proponents of electrophysiological methods of behavior control. One was a researcher who had conducted substantial research into methods of electronic control of human behavior. And that includes the use of radio transmitter receivers to determine the location, activities, and even thoughts of the individual using the device. This was in 1972.
Very good. What is your role in the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies today?
So, ISA Act was created for one specific reason, and that reason was to obtain data of those who were suffering from this phenomena. And we had concluded that data once we were able to get into the anechoic chamber in a controlled environment. And so ISA Act has officially no longer been active once we concluded that study, because of things that were happening to me personally. I was in a custody battle for my son, and what was happening is because I was becoming very effective and vocal on this topic, is that CPS started showing up at my front door. And once I obtained full custody of my son, I wasn't going to risk him being put in foster care. I was his only hope. And so I made a conscious decision to do this in secret, to continue behind closed doors and still see individuals based on referrals until my son was 18. He became 18 years old this year. So this is why you're seeing our cause at the forefront again. Now that he is 18, he's an adult, I don't have to worry about him. And I can continue to expound upon the work that we have done and continue to disseminate the information. My whole mission is to engage the general population. And it's not that I'm ignoring the TI community. I care very much, because ultimately my goal is to help everyone, but we are going to need everyone, including the general population, to support us. And that is happening now. And I'm hoping we're going to see some strides through this next administration coming forth, just because of their views on big pharma and the current situation of medicine and how it is not helping people. It is designed to keep you in medicine, constantly seeing doctors and becoming drug addicts. And I'm using that as a metaphor. They want you they want everyone medicated. And this is one example in the DSM-6, which is the psychiatric Bible.
Yes.
It now has a code literally that says most likely to develop a mental illness in the future. And it can be treated by medication. That's how insidious this country has become with its medicine, its psychiatric mental health practices.
I firmly believe that they want the entire population dumbed down, if you will, and not active, staying in their homes, watching their television sets, and doing nothing. Of course, if AI keeps on the way they're going, we're not going to have too much choice. But we have
they want you to have a new human experience. And the new human experience is be grateful that you're alive, own nothing, and be happy with it. That is what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay, Jesse, we have to go to commercial, and it's for our wonderful organization called TI Events and Tranquility at the helm.
Welcome to TIEvents.org, your official insider for the targeted individual community. As the go-to source for all TI events, we're here to keep you in the loop with the latest and greatest happenings. Discover daily conference calls, meetups, and exclusive events across the USA, all at your fingertips. Plus, planning a TI event? Advertise with us for free and connect directly with the TI community. TIEvents.org is not just a website. It's your gateway to a world of information, connection, and empowerment for TIs everywhere. TIEvents.org, your official insider. Dive in and discover today.
Okay, thank you very much. We like to.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that Tranquility is has a commercial on your show.
Oh,
what a wonderful individual, and what a bright star she is. And I'm really pleased to see that she's doing things.
Yeah, she's doing a great job for the community. She goes through, like if somebody wants to do a conference call, she'll vet them first to make sure that they're not going to come out and throw eggs at us, you know. But in reality, she is really wonderful. And let me see here. Okay, how would you tell an individual to self-protect?
Well, that's a good question. Well, you know, at the sudden onset of this phenomenon, it is confusion, it's fear of the unknown, not understanding what is happening to you. And the initial human response, which is quite normal, is either you fight or you have flight. Most individuals will engage in flight. And that is by construct. And the reason is, if you're in fright or flight mode, you're highly suggestible. Now, let's take it a step further. Now you start telling everyone what you're experiencing and they don't believe you. Now you become isolated. And now you're exposed to these auditory symptoms and these physiological symptoms that go along with the phenomena. You become more heightened aware, hypervigilant, and even more suggestible because you're basically in a trance state. And this is not a good, healthy pattern to be in. So the number one thing that I encourage everyone to do is really get in touch with your inner voice. You know, when you came into this planet, you know what that inner voice is. You know who you truly are. You must come in line with that. The other thing is to know what your moral compass is. Understand that totally. That's going to be the first step. The second step is, once you understand that, then it's important to not fall for the manipulation. And what I mean by that is, it's important that you use your critical thinking factors to really assess what is going on. So in the beginning, a lot of people will complain about this phenomenon called gang stalking or workplace mobbing. And that is all by design and construct. But it's usually only in the beginning. Now, as a hypnotherapist, I know how to plant seeds and I can grow them if I was unethical. Now, you plant that seed, it's like stacking up dominoes. And once you engage in the gang stalking in the beginning and you tip over that first domino, you don't need to continue it, because the human brain is going to be hyper aware and they're going to be hyper vigilant, and you're going to start believing that this phenomenon is happening all the time and everyone is out to get you. Now, I know some people aren't going to like that, but I've been doing this for 2 decades, and I can tell you I've been helping and working with people to understand that aspect of this and how to utilize their critical thinking factors. Hypnotherapy is another aspect of it that can help you be more in line and less suggestible. And that's going to change your life almost overnight. So those are some techniques and tools and something that I would highly recommend, in my opinion, if you are trying to protect yourself and be less affected by this as much as possible. The other aspect of it is that now, with the advent of technology, there are a lot of materials out there that you can lessen this effect. There are material constructs like cloth material that are embedded with silver oxide and coppers, that they even sell as these beautiful canopies over your bed that you can utilize and have grounding systems to them. That's going to be very effective for you. We have been able to develop a technique, particularly if you're having that 10 kilohertz, 11 kilohertz high pitch frequency that's synthetically induced. We have developed a way to block that out. In fact, I just did a scan on an investigator today, and she unfortunately had been assaulted by a local police department. They almost killed her. She was a firefighter. They completely crushed her neck, and she was in ICU. There were some correlations between the Department of Corrections in her case and a local police department. She started developing these auditory type symptoms along with everything else that falls in line with AHIs. And she has this ringing. And what we did is I just said, hey, do you got a pair of AirPods that have ambient aware capabilities? And her friend who was with her did. And I said, okay, I'm going to show you something. So put the frequency generator on at the right frequency, increase the amplitude. She didn't hear anything. Partner that was there said, oh my God, what is that? It's driving me crazy. And I said, well, we now know she has synthetic auditory symptoms because this blocks out that frequency. She's not hearing it. But now you get to experience what she's been dealing with 365 days a year, 24/7. So we now have a technique, very inexpensive to do, that can block out that modulated signal that's coming in. So that's another modality. We are currently, and this may be a differential diagnosis tool. And that's what's exciting about that. So we're digging in deeper on how we can further push this technique and this system further. But I wish I can just teach you over the internet how to do this, but I have to see you in person. Number one, we have to protect what we're doing. We don't want any naysayers or someone who's set out there to derail us and be less effective than we are. So it's important that we assess you and we make sure that you are truly a victim. And if you're truly a victim, we can definitely help you out this way. These are just a few techniques that can be utilized out there now. And the other thing is learning how to speak to the general population, your medical professionals, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, so it doesn't get you in trouble. How to utilize language in the right way that they can't turn it against you. These are all ways that you can protect yourself and make sure you stay as safe as possible.
Okay, there's one that you touched on, and that's educate yourself. Stay informed about the latest developments in mind control technologies and the potential risks. Knowledge is power and its defense. Learn as much as you can about your enemy. I think they have
about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The importance of expanding consciousness and understanding higher dimensions to resist manipulation.
So that's an interesting topic, and we're at our infancy of it, but with some very positive results. Raising your vibration tends to minimize the effects of this phenomenon. The only reason I say this, we've been doing these retreats, we've been engaging with the community in techniques to raise your vibration, so that that the negative aspects of this are lessened significantly. And in some cases, people say through meditative techniques that are specifically designed to do that, that a lot of these auditory symptoms do subside somewhat. And that is intriguing. The other thing is that you're able to make better decisions for yourself. You're able to surround yourself by a support group that is not constantly feeding you with negative programming. It's important to surround yourself by a positive support group, basically someone who loves you no matter what. This is what we do at these seminars and these retreats. It has been very, very effective.
Thank you. That was very informative. The connection to universal truths. Understanding higher dimensions can connect you to universal truths and principles, guiding your actions and decisions. This connection helps you to stay grounded and true to yourself. You just mentioned that a minute ago. That's why I'm bringing it up. Making it difficult for manipulators to sway you. Spiritual growth. Exploring higher dimensions can lead to spiritual growth, providing a sense of purpose and inner strength. The spiritual foundation can act as a shield against manipulative influences. I always say keep a positive attitude. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir.
Well, you're fine.
Go ahead.
Those are all very important aspects of this. And I always ask, particularly people who are going through this, I always ask, what are you doing to improve upon yourself now? Because what happens is a lot of people get in a confined loop system, and it's a negative feedback system. And once that happens, everything in their life is about targeting. It's important that you engage whatever it may be, whether you wanted to learn how to play the guitar, you wanted to learn how to play the piano, you wanted to learn how to be a better singer, you whether it's knitting, I don't care, hiking, to be adventurous, trying to live a normal life as possible. So you break out of that negative feedback loop that happens quite often with this phenomenon. That is so, so important. What are you doing to better your skill set, your knowledge, your talents? All those things are going to benefit you in the long run. And you're going to find that eventually you can be highly efficient even though you're being targeted.
Once again, very good. I would just like to bring up the subconscious, and this is something that you deal with on a continual basis. It's my understanding that if you go through a bad situation, these bad emotions and everything that goes along with it goes into your subconscious. But if you can, the next time that you run into this situation, if you can look at it more logically or with a higher power, it will go down to your subconscious as happy instead of something that's going to tear you up every time. I'm sure you do that in hypnotism to free somebody probably of sad memories. You should be the one talking about the hypnotism.
That's okay. So there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Richard Bandler and Granger, these two gentlemen, I should say. they were the co-founders or co-developers of neuro-linguistic programming. And in that, they teach how to utilize language so you can reprogram your subconscious mind. Now, what is the subconscious mind? Well, let me step back a second before I talk about the subconscious mind. Dr. Richard Bandler says, and he uses this analogy, that human beings have never been taught how to reprogram a neuron that has been programmed with negative information. And, negative information can be different from one person to the other. It just depends on what your perspective is. Now, with hypnosis and the ability to work with the subconscious mind, you can very rapidly reprogram that neuron with positive information, depending on what the goals are of that person. I always ask the question, what would make your life better? And in the future, if you were to engage in whatever this is that would make your life better, how do you see your future? How do you see the differences in your life? Now, the subconscious mind is the most powerful aspect of a person. It encompasses everything that you have learned from your parents, from childhood, your teachers, your experiences, your friends, your relatives, everything that you have learned. And then what happens is your conscious mind takes that information and measures it against your environment. In other words, what other people are saying, what there are experiences in your environment that are happening to you. And it'll measure that and it'll say, yes, I agree with that, or no, I don't agree with that. Now, the subconscious mind is different. It is the part of you that you can trust 100% of the time. What I mean by that, it is responsible in a way for every beat of your heart, every breath that you take, your blink responses. It intuitively knows what is best for you. Now, if you can program your subconscious with all of these positive affirmations, positive programming, end result is almost immediate in its output. And this is why working at the level of the subconscious is very beneficial, it's very effective, and you see immediate change.
Can you perhaps give us a little insight on the Mind Nexus retreats?
Okay, so the Mind Nexus retreats are just that. It is an environment, a safe environment where one can come and attend to really be an environment where you're completely loved. Doesn't matter who you are. And when you are at one of our retreats, you feel this. It is very life-changing. In fact, in our first retreat, me being the leader, I never expected it to be life-changing for me, but it was. We have special speakers with different backgrounds. For example, our last retreat, we had Dr. Alex Bloom, who teaches this 5D university. And basically what the concept is there is right now we live in a 2D world where our heads are in the sand, things are happening around us, and we may not be aware. Now you get to 3D and you're looking down, going up the stairwell, and you see what's happening and you start to get angry and you start to have all these emotions and they cause you to act out in certain ways. Then you get up to 4D and then you realize that this may not be the best way to be, but what do you do in order to overcome it? The ultimate goal is to get to a 5D perspective where your vibration is completely elevated. You completely live with love and light, and you understand what has been happening. But that is where the transformation happens. There's a meditative practices that he runs you through, which is unlike anything I was expecting to experience, but it was very transformative from a spiritual sense. Then we had a gentleman who worked for NASA who came and talked about, his name was Peter DiNucci, over 30 years in the airlines industry. And there was a time where we were having crashes from every airline company in the United States, and thousands of people were dying. And he created this thing called the human factors. And he's written several books about this. He even taught at NASA and trained at NASA. So we have individuals like that. We'll have engineers. We'll have spiritualists. We have hypnotists like me to help you with hypnotherapy if there's something that you wanted to work on, or something that you wanted to be better at, for example, whether that be speaking in front of people, whether it be sports enhancement, whether it be goal setting, whether it be stopping procrastination, whatever. So we have all these types of speakers that will engage you, and there is a schedule, and it's all voluntary. You don't have to do it. But we haven't had an event where someone has chose not to. And so this is what our retreats are about, where you can come, be engaged with like-minded people, feel completely safe, know that you're loved, and we're not going to judge you. And that is healing in and of itself.
Very good. Once again, I would like to get back to something we were talking about earlier, and that's psychological research. In psychology, understanding suggestibility. Now, I wanted to come back and revamp that, because this is what the perps use on the TIs. Suggestions, subliminals, suggestions, over and over and over again, repetitive, following you around and learning your routines, and then telling you what to do as you go through these routines. And I guess what we need is a thorough understanding of, you explained some of it, what we can do to really trip up this part of the targeting, which is the suggestions. That's the most dangerous.
Well, let's talk about what suggestibility is.
Okay.
Suggestibility is really how you intake information and process it. Now, this is developed from childhood, depending on whether you had a strict mother versus very affectionate, loving mother. You had a strict father versus affectionate, loving father, or vice versa. Or was it an abusive, toxic environment? All these things will predict and dictate how you develop your suggestibility. That's number one. Coming to grips with that type of childhood and dealing with those issues will help you be less suggestible. The other thing is, as I stated, that 30% statistics show that up to 30% of the population is highly suggestible without this technology. You add this on, it just puts it on steroids. But this is why I say it's important that you understand what your inner voice is, what your moral compass is. And this is something that we could help you that hypnotherapy can help with at a subconscious level. And what's even more important is when you understand that you may be highly suggestible, that's the first sign of recognition. In fact, we have a free suggestibility quiz that you can go to our website, and that'll give you a preliminary assessment. If you come back highly suggestible, we're working through, remember, we're getting thousands of inquiries a week. We're working through that to reach out. We're now implementing systems, because before it was just me. I just can't handle that. But now we're trying to work a system now that no one falls through the cracks. We want to make sure we address everyone. But anyhow, once you encompass all of those techniques and you can identify that and you understand why you are the way you are, again, knowledge is power. That is the beginning to healing. And that road is what we try to encourage and coach everyone to go.
Thank you. I have another question. What would you suggest to a TI who is receiving street theater, and the people are actually coming right up in their faces, within their 2 feet of security. Now, I would tell you what I would do, and I would call the police on and take a picture of this one individual. But as for doing anything about it, you can either call the police or do nothing about it. I mean, there's a few choices.
So the first thing that I recommend, and for example, recently I had an ER physician come see me to be scanned because he believed he was suffering through this phenomenon. Now, what I do now, ever since that Virginia visit with the military subcontractors, is I test to assess what their suggestibility level is in our surveys now. And the reason that's important, because it helps me come up with a plan to help you. Now, this physician believed that the street theater was happening all the time. And in fact, when I took his assessment in and I looked at the suggestibility outcome, he was highly suggestible. So remember I said in the beginning, in the majority of cases, I'm not saying 100%, never dial in 100%, but in a high majority of these cases, this is induced in order to get you to perceive that this is happening. And I know this because after we were done, he and I went to dinner, and I can see his body language and what he was looking at and what he was becoming oversensitive to. And I can tell he was believing that he was surrounded by perps. But the reality was that it wasn't. And so I had to bring to his attention, and I showed him, I said, hey, look, doctor, you test highly suggestible. And, remember, I told you about the insipidus of when this happens. It's by construct. But the fact is, I can promise you, this is not happening. You have been so conditioned and have been living this way for so long. That's your reality. What your mind believes is going to become your reality. That's one aspect of this. The other aspect is, and I've done this, if I believe someone is up to some type of a nefarious act, if you feel that there's a danger, yes, call the police. Particularly if you can prove stalking. I mean, if you have multiple videos of the same person doing the same types of behaviors and you're going to different locations where it doesn't make sense that someone like that would be at the same place. Like, for example, if you go to a dance studio and they show up at a dance studio and they're not dancing, or other places, and I'm just creating these scenarios. Obviously you would want to report it. I engage in conversation, friendly conversation. And I think the most of the time, what you find is what you thought was reality isn't the reality. And then ultimately, you can always choose to just ignore it and live your life. And I think that has been the most effective for most people, particularly when they're going through our coaching process, or just advice. We're now doing scanning clinics, and Tranquility involved in putting one of those together. It can be very expensive to come and fly to see me individually, one-on-one, when you talk about flights and hotels, accommodations, and everything. But it can be, and we're trying to figure out ways to scan as many people as possible so that they can get help or get on the path to gathering data or evidence to prove or even disprove in some minor cases of what is happening. And so if you have a group of folks, we're looking at least 10 in a day, we will come down and we will do what is called a scanning clinic. And in those clinics, we'll teach you some of the concepts that have been very effective over the years that we've learned. And in addition, really dig down deep into your suggestibility and go over, the results of an RF scan and we can coach you on what needs to happen next so that you can prove your case. The biggest thing I think is you get affirmation. And that's important, that you now have a support group that people say, I know people have always made the innuendos and inference that you're crazy, but you're not. And now we can take you down a roadway or a pathway of proof.
Very good. I would like to thank the heavens above that you decided to come back to the community and be strong and active once again, because you are an asset to this community and so many others.
Well, I would like to say this with regard to that. Every one of you out there is an asset. Every one of you is important. Not one of us individually is more important than the other.
That's the right answer.
And it's important that we all work together. It doesn't matter how we get to the end result as long as it's victorious. What matters is we stick together, we work together, we love each other together, and we understand that we all have the same mission at heart. It doesn't matter who gets there first. All that matters is that we get there.
Well, that's fantastic, Jesse. It's been a pleasure having you this evening, and I would like to look towards the future and definitely have you come back again. And
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate that. I don't know what happened at our last scheduled meeting, but I'm glad this happened.
Oh, believe me, I'm so happy. And I'd like to thank you, Jesse, and I'd like to thank my supporters and our listeners. And I would like to say good night from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Frank Allen.